consumers are getting more educated about agave spirits on a very surface level way. The algorithm dictates what goes viral and what doesn't, right? What's going to get more views, what's going to encourage more likes, what's going to get you more followers. And I think the algorithm is part of the issue.
An influencer instantly is someone that I'm skeptical of, because one criteria of their being an influencer is that they're paid and that they do the content creation for a living.
I personally prefer to drink tequilas that don't have additives in them. The caveat to that is additives are legally allowed by the Mexican norma regulating tequila, right? And so that's where this disconnect happens, right? Is the consumers are demanding something from producers that is not legally required of them. And so that's where this whole this growth and momentum behind influencers talking about additive-free tequila has kind of come to be. Social media is creating a generation of drinkers who need permission to enjoy what they're drinking.
I think that social media in general has had a tremendous impact on the decisions that people in our society make, and specifically in the U.S. I feel like globally it's been a phenomenon, but in the U.S., I don't know. I've heard more and more about its effects, its negative effects on younger people. And maybe this is controversial too, but I feel like with regard to the agave spirits industry, it's overall been a positive net impact.
Sure. I mean, I think that social media has brought a lot of positive aspects to the agave spirits industry. I think it's created more awareness around certain issues. I think that it's allowed the world to become smaller and allow consumers to directly access producers or access knowledge if they so desire about those products. But it's also created this mentality that I need somebody who has enough followers to tell me that it's okay to drink what I'm drinking, or that what I'm drinking is cool, in order to kind of be who in crowd.
Yeah. Who are you talking about though that needs an influencer, let's say, to tell them what's cool to drink?
I think consumers as a whole.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not thinking of one specific person, right? I'm thinking consumers as a whole who are somewhat interested in knowing what they're drinking, right? Not just people that are give me the cheapest thing, right? But that they've kind of progressed along the path where they're somewhat interested in knowing what they should drink, or they know that there's good and there's bad. But in order to determine what's good and what's bad, or feel like they're drinking something that's good, they need somebody with followers, with influence, to essentially bless the brand and say, yes, this is acceptable for drinking.
Wow. And are you saying this is a global phenomenon, or is this more of a...
I can't speak to global phenomenon. I mean, this is from my own personal experience, from what I'm seeing in my social media feed.
Okay, great. I mean, I think that's an interesting take. I don't take issue with it necessarily, but I think, if we're going to talk about the impact that social media influencers or agave spirits influencers have on the industry, maybe it would be helpful if we defined who an influencer is or is not.
Sure. I guess some of it's probably in the eye of the beholder, right? Like are you influenced by somebody else's post or opinion? And does that, influence your decision-making process about what you're going to drink?
So we're all influencers.
Potentially, right? But when I'm speaking about influencers, I'm thinking of people who are specifically creating content to grow a following base or to please a following base, and they're potentially getting paid for that content. Although I don't think that's a determining factor. I think you can have influencers who aren't necessarily compensated for the videos that they're producing. But it's somebody who's really intentional about the content they're creating with a goal of reaching that larger audience and continuing to increase their followers.
That's interesting because nowhere there did I hear you say with that a goal was to grow the agave spirits industry or help any particular, brands, whether they're big, small, or otherwise, or preserve, any particular aspect of the industry.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't say that. I mean, I don't think that to be an influencer, you can't be doing that at the same time. You can't have some goal or desire to help brands share their story or help more people learn about agave spirits or learn about the culture behind, agave spirits. But I don't think in my mind that that is a requirement. I think there's influencers that don't have those intentions.
So it makes me really curious. Why is this phenomenon of social media influencers so prevalent and specific to the agave spirits industry? Like I don't
know that it is.
And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see non-specific influencers promoting whiskey, bourbon, vodka, or gin.
I think they are. They're just probably not in your feed. That's not your algorithms giving you all the agave folks.
Okay.
But I definitely know that there. I mean, there's sometimes the same people that are there talking about agave spirits are also talking about bourbon, scotch, and rum.
Okay, so that's great. That got us to this point about the algorithm, and I think that that's important that it's ever changing, right? Is at least my understanding, but I think there is a factor to the algorithm that's I think ever present that is related to the number of actual followers that a person has. Would you agree?
Okay. Tell me what you mean by that.
So and I'm not sure. I did some very rudimentary research that indicated that someone with a following of at least 50,000 was required to, as a threshold to be promoted, sort of to go viral or to, have any kind of real impact on a large scale in social media.
Okay. I think when I think of the algorithm and how it relates to the conversation I think we're having, I think it's more relevant to say that, right? The algorithm dictates what goes viral and what doesn't, right? What's going to get more views, what's going to encourage more likes, what's going to get you more followers. And I think the algorithm is part of the issue because the algorithm is encouraging, right, these short format videos, right? TikTok, Instagram, you're looking at reels, 3 minutes is a long reel, right?
Yeah.
A really long reel. Yeah. And so, but what goes viral is this content that's shorter, that's well produced, that has really nice editing in it, but also hey, here's a couple tidbits of information, but you're not really able to deep dive into a topic, let's say agave spirit production, or the science behind aging a product, or any of those different types of things, because the algorithm doesn't support those types of content. So what you see is all these influencers making very similar types of content, and consistently putting out very similar content, and so all the consumers are seeing is the same exact thing, and it's very surface level. So consumers are getting more educated about agave spirits on a very surface level, in a very surface level way, right? They're not influencers, at least on social media from what I've seen, they struggle even if they want to deep dive into, the specifics and deep dive into like, hey, let's talk more about this story or more about this process, or let's fully explain what this means, because that type of content isn't supported by the algorithm.
Right. It's funny because it got me thinking about AI, and how there are now influencers that are not even real people, and I'm wondering, to what extent, they're having real influence in the market. But maybe that's a
Do you
topic
know when you're
for-
related to like agave spirits?
I don't know that. I was just thinking about that generally. I don't. I might follow some. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I doubt it.
And I think the other issue I see with like influencer content in general is, in order to stay relevant on social media, stay relevant in the algorithm, keep your followers engaged, get new followers, like you always have to be talking about something new, right? So like there's a new tequila that dropped. There's a new, there's this tequila brand aged in this specific type of barrel. And so this is the new content that everyone's going to push out because it's new and it's relevant, even though it's not necessarily, in my opinion, always the most important thing we should be talking about. But if it gets views and likes and shares, it's going to keep on.
So all of what you're saying though implies to me anyway that the net impact is negative.
I don't think so.
Is that what you're saying? No.
No, I mean, I think that there's pros and cons to social media's impact on agave spirits. I don't disagree that there's probably more pros than cons, but I don't think that means that we shouldn't talk about the cons and think about how that's impacting the consumer base and how that's impacting brands and producers and the ripple impacts of those consequences that come along with the positive.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it has me thinking about the way that social media has, in a way, really democratized, the playing field around marketing your brand.
I'm curious for you to elaborate more on that. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, if you have access to the source, if you have access to the source, the production, if you have creativity, if you have some luck, and perhaps editing skills, then a creative marketing strategy can go a long way with very little resources.
You're talking about for a brand.
Right. But I mean, a brand in conjunction with, a quote unquote influencer. Right. Or even without one, and if you were a small brand during the pandemic, I think it was not necessarily easy, but I think that there was an opportunity to capture like a very captive audience in a lot of ways.
Sure.
I mean, maybe that's not the case anymore, and I get that.
No, I think like if we're gonna break down like, hey, let's talk about pros and cons that social media's had on agave spirits industry. I think allowing for small brands to be able to basically go direct to consumer with their advertising, with their how they want to market their product, with sharing about their production process, with sharing their story. Wow, that's just made that all that much more accessible, right? A producer who has their own house brand at their palenque can download Instagram and make an account, right? That doesn't cost them money. What their reach is going to be is definitely impacted by a handful of different factors. And I think money is one of them, right? In terms of how many people they can actually reach with that content. But it's there, right? They can reach out to people, they can send messages, they can post this content and reach out to potential clients, customers, business partners, so on and so forth, and share their story in a way that didn't exist before the current day of social media.
Okay, so let's say that one of these brands finds an influencer that's willing to work with them pro bono, right? Because let's say that they want to help and have a certain ethic about them that wants to encourage X type of brand. What to your mind makes or gives an influencer the credibility to like really have an impact?
That's a good question. I think I look at it like, who have you supported in the past? What brands are you choosing to work with? Right? Because that's going to kind of be indicative to me of like, what are your values as far as this industry goes, and who are you choosing to align yourself with, right? Because I think that kind of alignment kind of shows, who you're supporting and who you think is maybe going about things the right way versus the wrong way. So if last week you were pushing out content telling me that, some crappy tequila brand is, the best thing since sliced bread, I might not really take what you have to say very seriously,
So
regardless of what you post the week after. You know what I mean?
But that's subjective, right?
Sure, absolutely.
It's a track record, right? That's subject to interpretation, but
Always.
okay.
Yeah.
So this is a personal credibility. Okay. Anything else?
I think that's a big one. And just like how they present themselves, right? Like, are you presenting yourself as an expert? Are you presenting yourself as somebody that's just trying to learn more and share as you go along? Like, how are you presenting yourself to your audience? Are you presenting yourself as, I am the expert on this? This is what I have to say. Are you presenting yourself as more of just a medium, like, hey, I'm here to help share the stories of these brands, and I'm not, that's what I'm here to do. I'm not claiming to be an expert, but instead I'm just here sharing these stories. Am I somebody that's going on my own journey of learning about these spirits and really just documenting that journey and sharing it with you? Like, those are all kind of three different personas that I've seen play out on different accounts, over and over and over again. And I think that's another thing, like, these people we're referring to, influencers. Many of them and you have too, like, we've met them in person. And for some of them, I consider them friends. Like, I think they're good people. I think that they have great intentions. Some of them, I think, produce good content, educational content that I support. Others, I think, miss the mark on what they really could be using their microphone for. But they're not just these like rumors of the algorithm. Like they're real people, right? We've met them, and so that's why I think they establish that level of credibility, because as they're on social media, but then there's this network of people, right, that know each other. And I think that is what establishes the credibility. When you see somebody at your favorite distillery, when you like this brand, and this person is also, at this distillery taking pictures with the master distiller, I think for some people that establishes more credibility for them.
So their track record with regard to partnerships, as well as maybe their legitimacy, sort of supported by the network, would you say that they have?
Yeah. Who
because they're real, right?
Yeah. Who do they affiliate with?
Okay. I mean, I agree with those. I guess the way that I would approach any particular influencer is that they might have, let's call it, trust until they lose it.
Sure.
And maybe that's generous. I think, if I'm being really honest, it's more skepticism from the start, and they have to prove themselves. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt. What would an influencer have to do to lose credibility, in your opinion?
I don't know that I agree with your premise that I immediately trust them.
Okay, great. Yeah.
I think I'm a little more jaded than that.
Yeah. Same.
Um, and so I think it's more of the opposite, like kind of what you mentioned before, which is instant skepticism, and more like, is this somebody who's earned my trust?
Okay.
Does
Great.
that make sense?
It does make sense. So what creates the sense of skepticism, though? I guess that's really what at the heart of what I'm thinking about.
I think it's just like, I was telling somebody the other day, they were telling me how good this bottle was that they had. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And I'm like, yeah, I have it too, you know? And I was like, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And the conversation essentially got to the concept of like buying blind. Like these influencers, like social media has made it so, right? Like one well-crafted reel could make people order product ranging in price from, $50 to $200. But a well-crafted reel can make somebody go online and make a purchase decision, because they trust the influencer, or they trust the content, or it was engaging enough, or gave them enough indicators that they felt that they needed to buy it. Or I think a lot of it is social media has created this sense of FOMO, right? Like, oh, like, do you have the new release from so-and-so? And it's like, well, everybody else that I follow has it. And so I want to have it so I can stay relevant and current and know what everybody's talking about. And I think what that's led to, and basically what I told this guy that I was messaging was like, I really don't buy much of anything blind anymore these days, because there's too much mediocre shit being promoted.
What do you mean by blind? Just that you haven't tasted it?
Yeah, that I haven't tasted it.
Okay. So you absolutely have to taste. And if
I wouldn't say it's like 100% steadfast, right? There are certain things that I'll buy because I'm interested enough, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, no, I'm not going to purchase something that I haven't tasted.
Great.
And I know that comes from a little bit of a place of privilege, that I have access to taste a lot of things that maybe not everybody would have access to unless they do buy.
I wasn't
it,
even
right?
considering that.
But I'm just saying I acknowledge that aspect of things. But yeah, I don't typically go out and like just order new releases online just because it's a new release.
So do you have all that access because you're an influencer?
Do you think I'm an influencer, Fred? I don't.
No,
I don't personally identify as one. No.
No, I don't. I wouldn't call you an influencer.
I have like 2,000 followers. I think that's the far cry from the 50,000 you mentioned.
That's exactly what that's exactly what I had in mind. I mean, I was trying to decide whether or not I thought, or what constituted an influencer. So what I did land on is that I think that an influencer instantly is someone that I'm skeptical of, because, at least for me, one criteria of their being an influencer is that they're paid and that they do the content creation for a living.
Sure.
And so with anyone that's being paid to create content, I'm instantly skeptical. And that skepticism is based on, knowing that there is an incentive that is not necessarily aligned with any values that I have or that I share.
Sure. So you're against paying influencers to
I'm not
market.
against it. We all have to make a living. I think it's a fine job to have. I'm just saying that
But
I'm
for
acknowledging
you,
the
it's
skepticism.
as soon as payment comes into the picture, that's when credibility goes out the door for you.
Well, that's where that's where I don't come from a place of trust, right? Like that's whereas like someone I meet on the street who's interested in agave spirits will immediately have my trust to lose. Whereas like I see a new influencer online.
So you're saying the
that's
first day
getting
we
into
met,
agave spirit.
the first day we met, you automatically trusted me?
Sure. Yeah. I think anyone that I meet.
You were like skeptical of like, who is this guy?
No. What did you trust me?
No, not at all.
What?
You're
Got over
you're this for the same reasons, right? That you're somewhat, you know, distrustful of an influencer because you're assuming they're getting paid, right?
Yeah.
Or and many of them are, right? But for that same reason, I was like, well, you have a vested interest in telling me your product is good,
Yeah.
right? I think you earn my trust over time, right? But I think there always has to be that like skepticism involved, like you said, when payment is involved. But I don't think that just because somebody gets paid, whether that's a brand rep, an importer, distributor, an influencer, I don't think that necessarily.
Okay, so how do you?
I don't think that undermines their credibility just right off the bat. I think it definitely can, but I think the saving grace of that is transparency, right? So like,
Okay,
it would be different. Like y'all were like, you know, you show up to like, you know, Club Bottle Share and you're like, hey, check out these like bottles of Agua de Sol, and like you're like talking all about them, right? And then like 3 months later, we find out that you're the importer, right? Like, I'll be like, why didn't he say that? Right? Like that seems a little
underhanded, yeah.
Yeah. Versus it's like, yeah, we know you're the importer for this brand and you're going to talk to us about it and then we can make our own decision, right? But I think you also have the opportunity to get to know you, your brand, who you stand for, who you partner with, which adds to your credibility, right? Like if I got a bottle of Agua de Sol off the shelf and it tasted like crap and it was 40% and it was, you know, this, that, or the other, that would impact your credibility, right? But you have a good track record.
Thank you.
At least for me, right? And so that's going to make me trust more of the products that you're choosing to import. But I think the same thing goes for an influencer. The same thing goes for someone I wouldn't maybe categorize as an influencer, but somebody on social media.
So I guess that's the part that's tricky for me is how do we get to that level of transparency in the social media space?
I think we're seeing a push for transparency in the industry for content creators to disclose when they're being paid for the content that they're producing, or what gifts or trips or other things are being provided to them by brands that they're potentially working with, right? And the thing is, I'm all for transparency, but there's some people that will take it, I think, a step too far, which is if you received anything for free from the brand, whether it's a free bottle, swag, otherwise, or if the brand is choosing to pay you to create content, that automatically means you lose your credibility as a influencer in the space, right? Like in the industry.
We should count how many times we've said influencer over the
Too
course
many
of
times. I'm done with the word. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you're searching for alternatives. Yeah, I mean, I guess to me, it's doing that work of getting to an understanding of why a certain influencer partners with, you know, X brand is more work than I care to do. And as someone who cares about the industry and about, you know, preserving certain aspects of it, if I am too apathetic to do that work, it makes me wonder if anyone, and maybe I'm giving myself too much credit, but like if there are people doing, you know, that level of work, you know, to make a determination about whether they support a brand or not. So let's say, you know, average Joe tequila drinker has an affinity for, you know, The Rock and has had this, you know, I don't know what to call it, other than, unless they have met in person, I can't call it a relationship, but like It's a parasocial relationship is the term that I was looking for in psychology, where it's one-sided, where like the, you know, person in the audience follows a particular, you know, figure, be it online or in the news, etc., and almost feels like they have a real relationship with that person because of their inherent sort of, you know, tribalist nature. Maybe it's someone that looks like them. Maybe it's someone that talks like them. Maybe it's someone with just, you know, similar interests. But when that feeling of the relation is so powerful, I think that like this idea that we're going to care about transparency with regard to like the influencer's relationship with the brand goes entirely out the window
For who?
for most people.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think I don't disagree with your point that celebrities have influence, right? Like, and I think the influencer phenomenon is similar, right? Like people feel like they know this person, that they've gotten to know them through a screen, right? Or like, hey, you know, Fred posted this bottle and I went and bought this bottle and I really liked it. Well, now Fred has a lot of credibility with me, right? Because he gave me a recommendation that I enjoyed. And so I've my day job is in nonprofit management.
Okay.
And as part of that, a lot of what I do is connected to philanthropy and fundraising. And there's a saying in philanthropy that people give to people that they know and trust, right? And I think that there's that concept holds true in the agave spirits industry in terms of the role that these influencers and or you know celebrities have had on consumers. Is that people have a sense, you know, they have a trust for these people. They have a sense that they know them, right? Whether they know them in person or not. They have a sense that they're connected to this person. They trust this person. And therefore, when this person gives them a recommendation, they're more likely to take it. Versus I'm scrolling through my feed and it's the first time I've ever seen you post a photo or seen one of your videos and you're telling me to go spend $180 on this amazing bottle of mezcal. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Right?
Right. Okay.
But
and then that gets me to my follow-up question, but make your point.
yeah, but if I consistently see your content in my feed and I have friends who have similar interests to me who are sending me your content and the videos that you're posting, well, that's going to establish a level of credibility for you, right? In my mind, and it's going to allow you to have, quote unquote, more influence.
Yeah. I mean, so the question that came to me as you were speaking is related to sort of my background in higher education, nonprofit. And I remember, you know, working with a development officer that, you know, shared with me that to get a potential or prospective donor to actually, you know, contribute, you had to have at least 3 touches. And so
Yeah.
when we're talking about, you know, influence and actually getting, you know, a prospective customer to buy a bottle, I'm wondering, like, how would you compare, like, these touches to, you know, social media appearances, if you will? Because I don't know, are these touches, like, in real life? Are they, like, what do these touches look like?
Well, I didn't know this turned into Fundraising 101 podcast, but I think there are similarities, and yeah, I've heard the 3 touches. Some say 5 touches, right? Like, but and by touches, essentially what they mean is some kind of contact, right? So like a thank you note for meeting from is a touch, right? Meeting them for coffee is a touch, right? A phone call is a touch, like all of those different interactions, right? So touch is essentially interactions. They need 3 positive interactions with you to be more likely to donate for your cause, right? And
But these are, like, personal. touches, right? Like they are
No.
direct. No, not
No.
necessarily.
No.
Okay.
So I don't want to get too off track here, but essentially what we talk about in like nonprofit development is like there's tiers of donors, right? So there's tier one, right? That's like your top donors. Yes, those are going to be like personal touches, like one-on-one, right? Like I'm going to reach out to you, Fred, because you have the capacity to give at a tier one level. And then there's tier two, which is like one to many, right? So like you have the capacity to give at a tier two level. And so you are not going to get a one-on-one meeting, right? But I might invite you to a happy hour with 20 people like you and me, right? And we're going to talk about things and talk about the work of the organization, this, that, and the other, right? So that's like a one to many, right? But that counts as a touch, even though it's not one-on-one,
Right.
right? And then there's the run to like very many, right? Which is what we would call like tier three, right? And you're not going to get a one-on-one meeting with me, and you're not going to get invited to the happy hour, but you're going to get a newsletter from us.
Yeah.
But that's a touch, right? And so I think influencers on social media, right? It's the tier three strategy, right? For brands. How can we touch all of these places? How can we touch all these people as many times as possible? Well, these people have a big microphone. They have a big reach, right? When they post something, they get more views and more shares and more likes than we do when we post something, or than the brand does when they post something maybe on their own, right? And it just so happens that those views and likes and shares typically come from people that are interested in the content that this person talks about, which happens to be agave spirits or the bar industry, and agave spirits are part of that. This, that, and the other, right? And so I think the logic completely tracks there, right? That they're looking for those touches with those consumers so that they can establish that sense of credibility, both as a brand, but then the influencer on their own to establish this sense of credibility. And then, that's what they're selling, right? If you can't show ROI to a brand, they're not going to keep buying content from you, right? To keep posting content if they're not making any money off of it. If they're not seeing a bump in sales, they're not going to continue to invest. Well, I would hope that they wouldn't.
Well, see, I don't know that I agree with that. And that's a good transition, actually, because I'm wondering, excuse me, let's cut that out.
Salud.
Actually, this might be a good point to ask, what am I drinking?
What do you think you're drinking?
I've been enjoying this. At first I thought it was something from Oaxaca, but I don't think so anymore. I'm thinking it actually my taste buds are taking me to Guerrero.
Why?
Yeah, I think it's got just like a little bit more umami.
Okay.
Since you mentioned earlier, I think you kind of primed me to get to there.
I influenced you?
Yeah, in a way you did. I think that's spot on.
Would it surprise you to know that that was made in Oaxaca?
No, I mean it's not that far from Guerrero. That was my first instinct. Is it?
Yeah, it is from Oaxaca. So this is from my friends at the Panal Ancestral.
Oh, great.
Which is a brand produced in Santa Maria Sola, just outside of Sol de Vega in Oaxaca. I had the opportunity to visit their palenque and stay with them for about 3 days back at the end of March, early April. And as part of that, I got to try some of the batches that they had there that they had been producing recently. And this was one of them. And so this is an ensamble of barril and tobosiche that was only 47 liters. Because they're kind of in that Sol de Vega region, they are distilling in clay, which is kind of traditional in that area. And the bottle has kind of a fun backstory. So these agaves they were growing wild on Rafa, the Maestro Mezcalero, his neighbor's property. And so, as I understand it, is somewhat common practice sometimes in Oaxaca. His neighbor said, "Hey, you can come harvest my agaves and make mezcal from them, and then I'll keep half the batch, and you keep half the batch."
All right.
So Rafa was like, "Yeah, sounds like a great deal." So they harvested these agaves that were growing wild on his neighbor's property. They produced a batch of mezcal, and when Rafa tried it, he was like, "Yeah, we're gonna buy the other half back from the neighbor."
Oh. Nice. Well, it's not that much.
And it's not that
Yeah.
big, right? And so when we were there and we were tasting different things, this was a batch that really stood out to me. Actually stood out as my favorite batch that I tried while I was there with them at the Palenque. And so I made sure to bring a liter of it back.
Barril and Tobasicha, do you know if it's 50-50?
I think it's approximately 50-50.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's excellent. But yeah, it definitely took me to Guerrero a bit. And you know what? I would not have guessed that it's clay pot. So that's cool. It's got a nice consistency to it, a nice sort of mouthfeel. That's funny. What do you?
I'm curious what I'm drinking.
What you got there?
I've also been enjoying it. Obviously, there's not that much left. To me, I get a chocolate note to this. Like, yeah, this like cacao, and not obviously not in like an artificial way, but when I drink this, even when I smell this, it reminds me of chocolate.
Wow.
And I've had that happen with other mezcals in the past. Obviously, some are like literally distilled with, right? But I don't know that this, to me, I don't know that this crosses that line. If it does, it's pretty.
Of like actually being distilled with cacao?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
To me, this like, if it does, it's pretty balanced.
Yeah.
And definitely still more agave forward because it's not like super prevalent, but it is there for me. But in the past, like when I've tasted those notes, it's either coming from like an espadín from the Mixteca or more commonly coming from like Mexicano.
Oh, really? Okay. I thought you were gonna say a tobala or a patatorm.
In my experience, I haven't really ever gotten like a lot of like chocolatey notes from Tobalat, but is this
No,
that?
No, it's not. And you know, I have to taste that again. You are tasting. Let me grab it for you.
Gerudo.
Yeah, agave americana.
Okay.
So that is from a really cool producer, Luis Jimenez, in Santa Catarina, Minas, bottled under, Agua del Sol, and also distilled in clay pots.
Yeah.
I think that was a little bit of a bigger batch, but for agave americana, I think it has a lot of depth. And it had been matured in glass for about a year, and now I think it's a couple years old. So
Yeah.
continued to mature.
I wouldn't have guessed necessarily Americana. Obviously I didn't. I guessed either a sweet espadín or more likely a Mexicano Rotacanta. But that's delicious. Thanks for sharing.
Have you gotten to visit them by any chance?
I have not. No, I haven't been invited.
Oh, that's too bad. That is too bad.
Maybe on your next influencer trip.
I wish I was an influencer. That's funny. Where were we?
Well, I think we talked a lot about, and I think you mentioned this before, a lot of the downsides to social media's impact on agave spirits. And I want to make the distinction that I'm not all doom and gloom on this topic of like social media's role in agave spirits and specifically
I mean, that's how I started the podcast. I was saying, like, I think it would be more controversial to share that I think these influencers have a really net positive impact.
I mean, like my personal journey with agave spirits really was started and grew through social media. And so I started learning more about tequila production and what was good tequila and what was bad tequila based on starting to do a little bit more research. And for me, it was kind of a way for me to connect with my Mexican heritage and roots, having grown up here as a Mexican American, but in the Pacific Northwest. And as I started deep diving down that rabbit hole, I'd get a bottle, or I'd try a flight at a bar or different things like that. And I'd take pictures and I'd want to share them. But I didn't want to put them on my personal page because I didn't want like all my family and friends to think I became an alcoholic. So I created my Instagram handle, Chuey Agave, right? And I was like, hey, I'm gonna post this agave content here, kind of as a way of just documenting my own journey, and connecting with others, and doing it in a way that didn't flood my friends and family feed with a bunch of agave content.
I must be in the wrong feed.
And that I had no idea when creating that account, and that it would turn into what it has. And what it has turned into for me is essentially like Instagram is my LinkedIn for agave spirits.
I mean, sure.
What's LinkedIn?
Okay. No, not what's
We're
LinkedIn, but like,
connected on LinkedIn. You can't tell me you don't know what LinkedIn is.
I know, but like, what? I don't know what it's good for. Honestly, it's.
So what is it? Do you understand the like? Okay.
I
So
remember what I
understanding-
used to think.
From my understanding, like the concept of LinkedIn was a social media platform that was intended for professionals. And
Sure.
it was intended to be a networking platform.
Right. Just call me jaded. I think that now with AI, everything is so manicured.
I'm just here advocating for LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'm simply using an analogy,
Sure.
right? My Instagram has turned into a networking platform for me. It's how I've connected with peers and developed friendships of people with similar interests around agave spirits.
People that you're touching.
Sure. Maybe.
No?
More people that I'm connecting with, right? Like I'm making genuine connections with some people, and like literally I have friends across the country, across the globe actually. Canada, Mexico, Europe, Asia included, that I've met through social media in one way or another, that are all passionate about the same thing, right? Which is agave spirits. Specifically for me, like agave spirits from Mexico. And like that would not have happened for me without leveraging social media. And social media brought that forward for me and helped me to become more connected. Social media is also a way that I connect and communicate with a handful of people that I also now am blessed to consider friends, who are the producers, who are the boots on the ground, who are in Oaxaca, in Michoacan, in Jalisco, all over the place, that I can connect with them with a few clicks, and they can be sending me a video of the live distillation that they're currently doing, right? Like, and how cool is that? And how small does that make the world? And how blessed am I to be able to, as a interested consumer, be able to have that level of access, right? That I don't think really exist in other spirits, right? Like I can have a lot more followers than I currently have and be talking about bourbon and the bourbon scene, and the master distiller at Jim Beam's not sending me videos at 2 in the morning of the distillation that he's doing, right? Like it just doesn't happen. But it does for agave, and I think social media is a big catalyst for that. And so personally, in my own journey, I've seen a lot of the positives.
Great. I mean, I love that for you. I wonder, and I'm sure that there are other similar stories. I guess I wonder if we can abstract from like your experience and talk about, more, high level, what we think social media influencers' net impact has been on the agave spirits industry.
Okay, why don't you start then?
I mean, I guess at first I thought that it was very negative. I thought that, and to some degree still do, think that, these influencers are diluting the richness of the culture and sort of washing over all of, the most important, most interesting aspects of the production, the cultivation, even the identifying of agaves in the field. It's recently sort of changed as really just over the last 72 hours as I, prepared for the podcast, because, I think that even though it's minimal and albeit biased, given my, personal gain from the growth of the category, I think net impact has been a growing interest in the category of agave spirits. And as people get, even though it might be a very, surface level, interest in the category, eventually my hope is that those same people, that will follow an influencer become more invested, that go on a journey similar to your own, to go down to Mexico, to meet a producer, to see the production, to be involved and express interest in, to the point where like they, get videos sent to them from the master distiller at 2 a.m. Like that's, a dream for me. I love sharing those, and I think, I think the industry is still, at least on the mezcal side, still pretty young and still pretty malleable. So it can grow in different ways. And hopefully, positively so.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. I think that, yeah, there's a net positive involved with social media in general, but influencers specifically, they are creating awareness about these spirits, right? And everybody's on their own personal journey. So some people, I think the majority of people, unfortunately, are, their journey is very surface level. But there's going to be people that are caught up in that web, that are able to deep dive it more and become advocates of their own, and share about their own experiences. I think while that is positive, I think that there are still, I have critiques for them, right? Like we talked about before, there's a need for transparency, in terms of when they're getting paid and when they're not, in order for them to maintain their credibility. But I also am a little bit critical of, and this is not like against one specific person, but I guess I'm critical of the industry. I'm critical of the influencers in the industry in terms of the issues that they choose to highlight.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that the issues that I don't think that the issues that they choose to collectively address are the most serious or threatening issues in the agave spirits industry today. And I think they know that.
Well, maybe.
I think they know that. But maybe the other topics aren't as romantic, or aren't as simple or as black and white as they might make them out to be. And that doesn't lend well to the content needed for the algorithm. And I think that's unfortunate. And I think, to be even more specific, right? Like I think a big issue I've seen it develop over the last 5 or so years that's really gained a lot of popularity online and is having impacts across the industry, specifically more on the tequila aspect of things in agave spirits, is this like additive free movement, right? There's this movement of consumers backed up by many influencers and many on social media against the use of additives in their tequilas.
Sure.
Right? And I'm not looking to get into a debate about additives. I personally prefer to drink tequilas that don't have additives in them. The caveat to that is additives are legally allowed by the Mexican norma regulating tequila, right? And so that's where this disconnect happens, right? Is the consumers are demanding something from producers that is not legally required of them. And so that's where this whole this growth and momentum behind influencers talking about additive-free tequila has kind of come to be, right? And I think that it's an issue worth talking about. I think that the conversation happening on social media, the conversation around influencers, turns the issue into a black and white issue, which we know for most things in this world, they're not black and white, right? So it becomes a this or a that, right? But I think it's definitely impacted the industry. I mean, if consumers are going to bars and they're asking, what additive free tequilas they have. If you walk into a store, a Total Wine or other potential liquor store, right? There's labels on the store shelves saying like this is our additive free section, right? And so it's created a ripple impact for sure, right? And I think overall that ripple impact has been good. But man, I wish these influencers would use their microphone to talk about the water scarcity issues in Mexico, about the overharvesting of agave, about the overplanting of agave, about the lack of biodiversity in blue agave in Jalisco, like about whether, producers and people involved in the production, the jimadores or otherwise, are still living in poverty while brand owners are getting rich. Like there's so many, what I would consider personally more important issues to talk about that aren't as sexy for Instagram reels, apparently.
Not as sexy or not as paid?
I think it's a mixture of both.
Is it? I mean, I just wonder who's going to pay an influencer to talk about the water scarcity, in rural Mexico, and not their brand.
Okay, well, who's paying influencers to talk about the additive free movement? And the answer to that is some of them are doing it on their own, right? Some videos are non-paid videos. Sure, I know that, right? But there's also plenty of paid videos talking about additives or additive free, or the pros to being additive free versus not being additive free, which is, I'm sure, being financed by brands that choose to be additive free. It's become a marketing term as well.
Exactly.
Because but that didn't happen overnight.
But there's no agave spirits brand out there that doesn't consume water.
Sure.
Or that doesn't consume agave.
Sure.
So agave scarcity, water scarcity.
But are there brands that are going about things in a more sustainable way? Is there is it just like, hey, if you use water, then you can no longer have a comment on the water scarcity issues in Mexico?
I don't know.
I think maybe 10 years ago, it wasn't sexy to be additive free. Nobody cared. What made people care? Enough people talking about it, in my opinion. Enough people talking about it, enough people with a big enough microphone talking about an issue made it the number one issue.
So you're suggesting that there should be some kind of, well, obviously more conversation about water scarcity, as an example, to get us to the point where there is like a sustainable water usage certification that brands can pursue?
No, and I don't want to get too off topic here, but I'm not even in favor of an additive free certification, right? Like I'm speaking much more broadly here, and really saying these issues are important enough that they should be talked about by people with these microphones related to this industry.
But to what end?
And especially if these are people that monetize the industry in any way, right? And I'm not against them monetizing the industry, but I think that there's a sense of corporate responsibility associated with people that make money off of this industry and profit off of this industry to talk about the issues impacting the people on the ground.
But so what motivates, though, that corporate responsibility?
I don't know what motivates it. I'm saying I think it should happen.
But it's people talking about it, right? So it sounds like the takeaway from this message.
Because here's the thing: as soon as you see, and as I can tell you right now, that there are consumers out there that as soon as they're presented with a new brand of tequila, their first question to the producer to the brand is, are you additive free? Right? It's their litmus test for what is. Did you just flip me off? I saw that. That's okay. It's their litmus test for what is good quality versus bad quality.
Well, that's unfortunate.
I'm less interested in getting it. I think that could be a whole episode in and of itself, right? Like, what I'm saying is there's people in this industry with a microphone. I think that my critique of them is that they should use that microphone to talk about issues that I would consider existential threats to the industry, more so than things that they currently choose to talk about. Additives in tequila is one example of that, but I don't think it's all of it.
I think that's a great takeaway from this episode. Do you have a camineta for us?
A camineta. I don't have a number, if that's what you're asking.
No,
But I think
can I pour you one?
That is my, yeah.
A camineta? Which one do you want?
Well, you poured the one that you brought, so I'll drink the one that I brought. I feel like I kind of shared I guess that's my biggest takeaway at the end of all of this is social media has done a lot of good for the agave spirits industry. It's made the world smaller. It's helped me in my own personal journey, right? And so I'm biased in that way, but I've seen a lot of the pros to that. Like you mentioned, it's helped to make it easier for small brands specifically to be able to market their products.
But it's important that we're skeptical, that we ask questions,
Absolutely.
and that we push them, right? That we challenge them to talk about issues that are relevant to us as well as conscious consumers.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard part, right? Like, there's been times I've watched videos, and like I said, I know some of these people, and I think most of them, at least from my experience and the ones I've met, they have good intention. But I'll watch a reel and I'm like, that's not right. Like,
Yeah.
that's a little bit of a oversimplification, right? And I'll send a DM or, I'm not here to call people out in comments. I'm not here for the drama, right? But like, I'll send a DM and I'll be like, hey, just so you know, like, this is my understanding of this. And like, more often than not, the response I get back is like, yeah, Chuey, you're totally right. But I didn't have time to talk about that on the reel.
Right.
And I was like, and I think that's more where my critique also goes to the algorithm. Well, to the people with the microphone, but like, why do they not have time to talk about it on the reel?
Right.
And it's because they have to create content that fits with the algorithm to stay relevant, to increase their followers, and to keep their views, likes, and impressions where they want them to be. Right?
I guess.
Your closing thoughts, I guess.
I mean, I was kind of getting to that with, the need to remain vigilant, to be aware of what we consume, to know that even though we might not necessarily agree with anything that a particular influencer says or promotes, but still know that whatever they did share has an effect whether we like it or not, right? It has primed our brain in a way that we will, the next time we sit at a bar and see the brand that X influencer mentioned, will have a thought. It might not even be a conscious thought, but it will be like a a presence that has an effect. And so at least for me, a big part of the reason why we rely on those touches, why we rely on likes and impressions to grow a brand, is because even though there's not an ROI on a particular partnership immediately, over the long run, those impressions, do have an effect on choices that we make in real time. And so, I think what you said is super important, that when we meet influencers in person, that we have conversations about the topics that are important to us, and hope and perhaps challenge them to address those topics, because they are existential threats to our industry, to the producers, and the brands that we love. So I don't know. I think, to anyone watching, I think that it would be great if you all shared what topics you would like your favorite influencer to talk about as it relates to the agave spirits industry.
Salute to that.
Brandon?